On behalf of New Zealand, I want to apologise to Grace's family. Your daughter should have been safe here, and she wasn't, and I'm sorry for that.
The disappearance of Grace Millane. In December 2018, a large suitcase was found in a forest outside Auckland. Its contents would shock a nation and spark international outrage. This is the story of room 308. Grace Millane, a 22-year-old British backpacker, arrived in New Zealand on November 20, 2018. She had spent 6 weeks in South America and was excited to celebrate her upcoming birthday in Auckland. Grace was known for her adventurous spirit and love of travel. On December 1, 2018, security cameras captured Grace entering the City Life Hotel with 𝗧𝗵𝘁𝗰𝘀𝗄𝗏, a man she had met on Tinder. This would be the last confirmed sighting of Grace alive. When she failed to contact her family on her birthday, alarm bells rang. Her parents, unable to reach her, grew increasingly worried. The Millane family's concern quickly escalated into a full-scale missing person investigation. Auckland police launched a citywide search, hoping to uncover any clues about Grace's whereabouts. As days passed without any sign of the young traveler, the case began to capture national and international attention. 2. A citywide search. As the search for Grace Millane intensified, Auckland police sprang into action, leaving no stone unturned in their efforts to locate the missing British backpacker. Detective Inspector 𝗧𝗵𝘂𝗶𝗺𝗏, who led the investigation, quickly mobilized his team to gather and analyze every piece of available evidence. The police's first step was to review extensive CCTV footage from around the city. Officers meticulously combed through hours of video, tracing Grace's movements on the night of December 1st. They focused on the areas around the City Life Hotel, where she was last seen entering with a man she had met earlier that evening. Simultaneously, investigators launched public appeals for information. They released photos of Grace and details of her last known whereabouts, urging anyone who had seen her or had any information to come forward. The response from the Auckland community was overwhelming, with numerous tips and potential leads pouring in. As the investigation progressed, police made a crucial discovery at the hostel where Grace had been staying. Upon entering her room, they found her belongings untouched since her disappearance. Her passport, clothes, and other personal items remained neatly arranged, suggesting she had not planned to leave for an extended period. This discovery deepened the mystery surrounding her disappearance and heightened concerns for her safety. The lack of activity in Grace's room also provided investigators with a clearer timeline. It became evident that she had not returned to the hostel since the night she was last seen on CCTV footage. This information narrowed the focus of the investigation and increased the urgency of the search efforts. As days passed without any sign of Grace, media attention intensified. Local and international news outlets began covering the story, broadcasting images of the young traveler and details of the ongoing investigation. The case struck a chord with the public, particularly resonating with other young travelers and their families. The growing media coverage brought both benefits and challenges to the investigation. On one hand, it helped spread awareness and encouraged more people to come forward with information. On the other, it put immense pressure on the police to provide updates and make progress in the case. Amidst the mounting public concern, Grace's family made an emotional plea for help. Her father, David Millane, traveled from Essex, England, to New Zealand to assist in the search and appeal directly to the public. In a heart-wrenching press conference, he expressed the family's distress, saying, "Grace is a lovely, outgoing, fun-loving, family-orientated daughter. She has never been out of contact for this amount of time." The sight of a distraught father searching for his daughter in a foreign country touched the hearts of many New Zealanders. It sparked a wave of empathy and renewed determination to find Grace. Local volunteers organized search parties, combing through parks and forests in the Auckland area, hoping to find any clues that might lead to her whereabouts. As the investigation entered its second week, the tone of the police statements began to shift. While initially treating Grace's disappearance as a missing person case, investigators now had reason to believe that foul play might be involved. Detective Inspector Beard's updates became more somber, hinting at the possibility of a tragic outcome. On December 8th, 1 week after Grace's disappearance, police made a grim announcement. Detective Inspector Beard stated, "The evidence we have located so far, our scene examination, some of the CCTV footage we have, and our investigation has determined that Grace is no longer alive and that this is a murder investigation." This devastating news sent shockwaves through New Zealand and beyond. The case that had begun as a search for a missing traveler had now become a homicide investigation. The public's concern turned to outrage, and demands for justice grew louder. 3. The prime suspect emerges. As the search for Grace Millane intensified, investigators zeroed in on a person of interest, 𝗧𝗵𝘁, a 26-year-old man last seen with Grace on the night of her disappearance. CCTV footage had captured the pair entering the City Life Hotel together, making 𝗵𝘁 a crucial figure in the investigation. Born in Wellington, 𝗵𝘁 had a history of compulsive lying, often fabricating details about his personal and professional life. He had claimed to be a professional athlete and lied about his job status, creating a complex web of deceit that would soon unravel under police scrutiny. When initially questioned by police, 𝗵𝘁 presented himself as cooperative and concerned. He claimed he had last seen Grace at 10 p.m. after what he described as a pleasant date. However, this account quickly fell apart as investigators reviewed the CCTV footage, which clearly showed the two entering the hotel together later that night. As the interrogation progressed, 𝗵𝘁's story began to change. Faced with mounting evidence that contradicted his initial statements, he altered his account of the evening's events. The inconsistencies in his narrative raised red flags for the investigators, who pressed him for more details. Detective Inspector 𝗧𝗵𝗂𝗶𝗺𝗲, leading the investigation, noted the suspects changing stories with growing concern. Each new version of events seemed to be an attempt to explain away the evidence presented to him, rather than a genuine recollection of what had transpired. The turning point came when 𝗵𝘁 finally admitted that Grace had died in his hotel room. However, he claimed it was an accident that occurred during consensual rough sex. This admission, while shocking, did not align with the evidence the police had gathered. Detective Inspector 𝗧𝗵𝗂𝗶𝗺 later stated that 𝗵𝘁's actions indicated a high level of callousness and premeditation, undermining his defense of accidental death. As the investigation deepened, a disturbing pattern emerged. Police uncovered 𝗵𝘁's history of abusive behavior towards women, including previous violent sexual assaults. This revelation suggested a pattern of dangerous behavior that had escalated to a tragic conclusion with Grace Millane. The evidence against 𝗵𝘁 continued to mount. Digital forensics revealed incriminating internet searches made by the suspect in the hours following Grace's death. These searches, along with his attempts to dispose of evidence, painted a picture of a calculated attempt to cover up his actions. On December 8, 2018, exactly 1 week after Grace's disappearance, police made the decision to arrest 𝗧𝗵𝘁. The arrest came after a week of intense investigation, during which substantial evidence had been gathered against him. The CCTV footage, his inconsistent statements, and the forensic evidence from the hotel room all pointed to his involvement in Grace's disappearance and death. The arrest marked a grim turning point in the case. What had begun as a missing person investigation had now officially become a murder inquiry. Detective Inspector 𝗧𝗵𝗂𝗶𝗺𝗏 made a somber announcement to the press, confirming that Grace was believed to be dead and that they were treating the case as a homicide. The news of 𝗵𝘁's arrest and the confirmation of Grace's death sent shockwaves through New Zealand and beyond. The case had captured international attention, and the tragic turn of events left many people struggling to comprehend how a young woman's adventure of a lifetime had ended so horrifically. As 𝗵𝘁 was taken into custody, investigators turned their attention to locating Grace's body. The suspect's movements in the days following her disappearance became crucial in the search. Police combed through hours of additional CCTV footage, tracing 𝗵𝘁's steps in the hope of finding where he had disposed of Grace's remains. 4. The grim discovery. The search for Grace Millane took a grim turn as police shifted their focus to the 𝗬𝗂𝗶𝗺𝗃 Ranges, a vast forested area west of Auckland. Detective Inspector 𝗧𝗵𝗂𝗶𝗺𝗏, leading the investigation, had received new information that pointed to this rugged terrain as a potential location of interest. The dense bush and steep hills of the 𝗬𝗂𝗶𝗺𝗃 Ranges presented a challenging search environment, but investigators were determined to leave no stone unturned. As dawn broke on December 9, 2018, a team of police officers and search and rescue personnel began combing through the forest. The atmosphere was tense, with everyone acutely aware of the gravity of their mission. They meticulously searched through the thick undergrowth, looking for any sign that might lead them to Grace. Hours into the search, a member of the team made a startling discovery. Partially concealed by leaves and soil, they spotted the corner of what appeared to be a large suitcase. The officer immediately alerted his colleagues, and the area was quickly cordoned off as a potential crime scene. Forensic experts were called in to carefully excavate the area around the suitcase. As they worked, the tension among the search team was palpable. Everyone present knew that this discovery could potentially bring answers to the questions that had gripped New Zealand for over a week. As the suitcase was slowly unearthed, its size and weight immediately raised concerns among the investigators. Detective Inspector Beard, who had arrived at the scene, watched with a heavy heart as the forensic team prepared to open the suitcase. The moment was fraught with anticipation and dread. When the suitcase was finally opened, the worst fears of the investigation team were confirmed. Inside lay the body of Grace Millane, the young British backpacker whose disappearance had captured the nation's attention. The discovery marked a tragic end to the search and confirmed that the missing person case had indeed become a homicide investigation. Detective Inspector Beard, visibly moved by the discovery, later addressed the media. He stated the body was found intact and a post-mortem examination would be carried out to determine the cause of death. His words were measured, but the emotion in his voice was clear. The discovery of Grace's body had brought a sense of closure to the search, but it also marked the beginning of a new phase in the investigation, bringing her killer to justice. The location where Grace's body was found, approximately 19 kilometers west of Auckland, quickly became a focal point of the investigation. Forensic teams meticulously combed the area, searching for any additional evidence that might shed light on the circumstances of Grace's death and the events that followed. The discovery of Grace's body in the suitcase painted a chilling picture of the lengths her killer had gone to conceal his crime. It was a stark reminder of the calculated nature of the act, dispelling any notion that her death might have been accidental. As news of the discovery spread, a wave of grief washed over New Zealand. The case had touched the hearts of many, and the confirmation of Grace's death brought a collective sense of sorrow to the nation. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, visibly moved, addressed the nation, saying, "On behalf of New Zealand, I want to apologize to Grace's family. Your daughter should have been safe here, and she wasn't." The grim discovery in the 𝗬𝗂𝗶𝗺𝗃 ranges marked a turning point in the investigation. With Grace's body found, investigators could now focus on building a case against the prime suspect, 𝗧𝗵𝘁. The evidence gathered from the forest scene, combined with the earlier findings from the City Life Hotel and 𝗵𝘁's interrogation, began to form a damning picture of what had transpired on the night of December 1 to 2, 2018. The search team's discovery of Grace's body in the suitcase also provided crucial forensic evidence. The manner in which she had been disposed of spoke volumes about the killer's state of mind and actions following her death. This evidence would prove invaluable as the case moved towards prosecution. As the investigation progressed, attention turned to 𝗵𝘁's movements in the days following Grace's disappearance. CCTV footage showed him buying cleaning supplies and a suitcase, actions that now took on a sinister significance in light of the discovery in the 𝗬𝗂𝗶𝗺𝗃 ranges. 5. Unraveling the truth. With Grace Millane's body discovered in the 𝗬𝗂𝗶𝗺𝗃 ranges, investigators turned their attention to room 308 of the City Life Hotel, where she was last seen alive. The room held crucial evidence that would help piece together the events of that fateful night. Forensic teams meticulously combed through the hotel room, using advanced techniques to uncover traces of evidence invisible to the naked eye. They applied luminol, a chemical that reveals clean blood, to various surfaces in the room. The results were chilling. Bloodstains were detected on the floor, indicating a violent struggle had occurred. Dr. Simon Stables, the forensic pathologist assigned to the case, examined Grace's body and the evidence from the hotel room. His findings were grim. Dr. Stables testified that Grace had been strangled, and the force applied to her neck was significant. He estimated that the pressure must have been maintained for 4 to 5 minutes to cause death, ruling out any possibility of an accidental occurrence during consensual activity. As investigators dug deeper into the digital evidence, a disturbing pattern emerged. In the hours following Grace's death, 𝗧𝗵𝘁 conducted a series of internet searches that painted a chilling picture of his state of mind. He queried about the hottest fire and flesh-eating birds, suggesting a preoccupation with disposing of evidence. Even more disturbingly, 𝗵𝘁 visited a pornography website and took intimate photographs of Grace's body after her death. These digital breadcrumbs left by 𝗵𝘁 provided investigators with crucial insights into his actions and mindset following the murder. The searches not only indicated his attempts to cover up the crime, but also revealed a disturbing lack of remorse or respect for his victim. During his interrogation, 𝗬𝗂𝗃 initially maintained his innocence, claiming that Grace's death was a tragic accident during consensual rough sex. However, as investigators presented him with the mounting evidence against him, his story began to crumble. The forensic evidence from room 308, combined with his incriminating internet searches and the manner in which Grace's body was disposed of, painted a picture of a premeditated act rather than a tragic accident. Detective Inspector Scott Beard, who led the investigation, expressed frustration with 𝗬𝗂𝗃's defense strategy. "The victim isn't there to answer," he stated, highlighting the challenges faced by the prosecution when defendants attempt to shift blame onto the deceased. This statement underscored the importance of the forensic and digital evidence in piecing together what truly happened in room 308. As the investigation progressed, a clearer timeline of events began to emerge. On the night of December 1, 2018, Grace and 𝗬𝗂𝗃 met for drinks, a seemingly innocent Tinder date. They were later seen entering the City Life Hotel together. What transpired in room 308 over the next few hours would end Grace's life and shock a nation. The evidence suggested that at some point during the night, the encounter turned violent. The bloodstains revealed by luminol indicated a struggle, and the pathologist's report confirmed that Grace had been strangled with considerable force. 𝗬𝗂𝗃's claim of accidental death during consensual activity was inconsistent with the duration and intensity of force required to cause strangulation death. In the aftermath of Grace's death, 𝗬𝗂𝗃's actions spoke volumes. Rather than seeking help or reporting the incident, he embarked on a calculated attempt to cover up his crime. He purchased cleaning supplies and a suitcase, methodically cleaned the hotel room, and then transported Grace's body to the 𝗬𝗂𝗃𝗄 Ranges, where he buried her in a shallow grave. The digital evidence proved particularly damning. 𝗬𝗂𝗃's internet searches in the hours and days following Grace's death revealed a disturbing preoccupation with concealing his crime and a callous disregard for his victim. These searches, along with the intimate photographs he took of Grace's body, painted a picture of a man more concerned with self-preservation than remorse or accountability. As the prosecution built their case, it became clear that 𝗬𝗂𝗃's defense of accidental death during consensual activity would not stand up to scrutiny. The forensic evidence, the digital trail he left behind, and his actions following Grace's death all pointed to a deliberate act of violence followed by a calculated attempt to evade justice. 6. Justice for Grace. The trial of Jess 𝗬𝗂𝗃 began on November 4, 2019 at the Auckland High Court. The courtroom was packed with journalists, members of the public, and Grace Millane's family who had traveled from England to seek justice for their daughter. The prosecution, led by Crown Solicitor Brian Dickey, presented a compelling case against 𝗬𝗬𝗃, painting a picture of a callous and manipulative killer. Over the course of 3 weeks, the jury heard detailed evidence about the events leading up to Grace's death. CCTV footage showed the pair's movements on the night of December 1, 2018, as they visited several bars in Auckland's city centre before heading to 𝗬𝗂𝗃's hotel room. The prosecution argued that what happened next was far from the consensual encounter 𝗬𝗬𝗃 claimed. Forensic experts presented crucial evidence from room 308 of the City Life Hotel. They described how luminol testing revealed significant blood staining on the floor, indicating a violent struggle had taken place. Dr. Simon Stables, the forensic pathologist who examined Grace's body, provided damning testimony. He stated that the cause of death was sustained pressure to the neck, lasting 4 to 5 minutes. This evidence directly contradicted 𝗬𝗬𝗃's claim of accidental death during rough sex. The jury also heard about 𝗬𝗬𝗃's actions following Grace's death. His internet search history revealed queries about body disposal methods and 𝗭𝗏𝗏, suggesting a premeditated attempt to cover up the crime. The prosecution argued that these searches, along with 𝗬𝗬𝗃's purchase of cleaning supplies and a suitcase, demonstrated a clear intent to conceal his actions. Throughout the trial, 𝗬𝗬𝗃 maintained his innocence, claiming Grace's death was a tragic accident. His defense team argued that the encounter was consensual and that Grace had asked to be choked during intimate activity. However, this defense strategy faced significant challenges as the prosecution presented evidence of 𝗬𝗬𝗃's history of violence against women and his pattern of compulsive lying. As the trial progressed, the courtroom atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Grace's family sat through harrowing testimony, hearing details of her final moments and the defendant's attempts to dispose of her body. The case had captured the nation's attention, with many New Zealanders following the proceedings closely and expressing outrage at the circumstances of Grace's death. On November 22, 2019, after just 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. 𝗧𝗵𝘁𝗰𝘀𝗄 was found guilty of murder. The courtroom fell silent as the foreman delivered the unanimous decision. Grace's family, visibly emotional, embraced each other as justice for their daughter was finally served. The sentencing hearing took place on February 21, 2020. Justice Simon Moore presided over the proceedings, carefully considering the aggravating factors of the case. He emphasized the brutal nature of the crime and 𝗵𝘁𝗀's lack of remorse. In his sentencing remarks, Justice Moore stated, "You were a stranger, she trusted you. You are a large and powerful man, she was diminutive. You were in a position of total physical dominance." 𝗧𝗵𝘁𝗰𝘀𝗄 was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years. This sentence reflected the gravity of the crime and the need to protect society from a dangerous offender. The judge's decision was met with approval from both the public and legal experts, who viewed it as a just punishment for such a heinous act. Following the sentencing, Grace's family delivered powerful victim impact statements. Her mother, Gillian Millane, addressed the court via video link, describing the devastating impact of Grace's murder on their family. She spoke of the barbaric way her daughter died and the pain of knowing her body was dumped like rubbish in the bushes. Grace's father, David Millane, who had been present throughout the trial, also spoke of his family's loss. He described Grace as our sunshine and said her death had left a huge hole in their lives. The family's statements underscored the far-reaching consequences of 𝗵𝘁𝗀𝗀's actions, highlighting the profound grief and trauma inflicted not just on Grace, but on all those who loved her. 7. A nation's response. The murder of Grace Millane sent shockwaves through New Zealand, sparking an unprecedented public response. As news of her death spread, a wave of collective grief and outrage swept across the nation. New Zealanders, known for their welcoming attitude towards travelers, felt a deep sense of shame and sorrow that such a horrific crime had occurred on their soil. On December 11 and 12, 2018, candlelight vigils were held across New Zealand. Thousands gathered in cities and towns to pay tribute to Grace and show support for her family. In Auckland's Federal Street, near where Grace was last seen alive, a sea of candles flickered as people stood in silent remembrance. Similar scenes played out in Wellington, Christchurch, and other locations, demonstrating the profound impact Grace's story had on the entire country. The case ignited intense discussions about violence against women in New Zealand. Many were shocked to learn that the country, often perceived as safe and peaceful, had such high rates of domestic violence and femicide. Advocates and women's rights organizations seized the moment to call for societal change and better protections for women. In response to the public outcry, the New Zealand government pledged to review existing laws and implement new measures to combat violence against women. Lawmakers began drafting proposals for stricter penalties for violent offenders and improved support systems for victims of domestic abuse. While these legislative changes were not solely attributed to Grace's case, her story undoubtedly accelerated the process and brought renewed urgency to the issue. Social awareness campaigns emerged in the wake of the tragedy. One notable initiative was the Love Grace handbag appeal, started by Grace's family in the UK and quickly adopted in New Zealand. The campaign collected handbags filled with essential items for women fleeing domestic violence situations. Each bag included a tag with Grace's name, ensuring her memory lived on through acts of kindness and support for other women in need. The Love Grace campaign gained significant traction, raising over £11,000 for the White Ribbon campaign, an organization dedicated to ending male violence against women. The success of this initiative demonstrated the lasting impact of Grace's story and the public's desire to effect positive change in her memory. Grace's murder also sparked conversations about the safety of solo female travelers. Her story resonated with young women around the world who saw themselves in her adventurous spirit. Travel bloggers and safety experts began sharing more tips and resources for women traveling alone, emphasizing the importance of staying connected with family and friends while abroad. The international impact of Grace's story was significant. News outlets worldwide covered the case, leading to discussions about violence against women on a global scale. In the UK, Grace's home country, her death prompted soul-searching about the safety of young people venturing abroad and the responsibilities of both travelers and host countries. However, the extensive media coverage of the case also drew criticism. Some felt that the intense focus on Grace's personal life during the trial, particularly the defense's attempts to portray her death as a result of consensual sexual activity gone wrong, was a form of victim blaming. This sparked debates about how the media reports on such cases and the treatment of victims in the justice system. In New Zealand, the case led to a revaluation of the country's image as a safe haven for tourists. Tourism officials and government agencies worked to reassure international visitors while acknowledging the need for improved safety measures. The tragedy served as a wake-up call, prompting a nationwide conversation about the balance between maintaining New Zealand's welcoming reputation and ensuring the safety of both residents and visitors. Despite the dark circumstances, moments of humanity shone through. New Zealanders rallied around the Millane family, offering support and condolences. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern personally apologized to the family, saying, "Your daughter should have been safe here, and she wasn't. I'm sorry for that." This sentiment was echoed by countless New Zealanders who felt a collective sense of responsibility and shame. Grace's family, in the face of unimaginable grief, expressed gratitude for the support they received from New Zealanders. They stated, "By the amount of pictures and messages we received, she clearly loved this country, its people and the lifestyle." This gracious response in the wake of tragedy further galvanized public support and determination to honor Grace's memory through positive action. This initiative reflects Grace's compassionate nature, as evidenced by her donation of hair to the Little Princess Trust before her trip. The case had far-reaching implications, prompting discussions about solo female traveler safety and leading to changes in legislation and social awareness campaigns in New Zealand.